Bueno, seguimos ahora con...
Okay, let's assume with Juan now. He's going to tell us about an AZURE assets audit. I was going to introduce him, but I think he'll do it much better. So he'll introduce himself. My name is Juan. Good morning. Juan Garrido. Many of you know me already. I work as a security consultant, and I'm going to tell you a bit about my experience auditing cloud, and in this case, AZURE. I want to thank the malware community from Manu Quintan, and I will give you a bit of context, because what I've done about what I've had to do to move forward in the investigation, and I've had to ask for all sorts of things, different malware samples and attempts to exploit the platform, etc. I also want to thank Microsoft because they have given me not full access to the infrastructure, but part of that. So I'm going to focus, of course, in AZURE. Because this year the topic is DevOps, securities, hacking, and so on, I think a lot of us here are already doing things in cloud. Only 20? Just a few. There are some jokes on the issue of cloud. Because what is cloud? There are many jokes, and because cloud is just somebody who is managing your computer. It's a computer outside. You just input the data, and the infrastructure is being managed by somebody else. And that's an idea which is, to begin with, true. And it could be closer to what cloud means, but cloud nowadays is something else because it's here to stay. It's been working for a long time. There are many platforms. Some have a bigger market share, and others have a smaller one. And AZURE is one of them. Traditionally, I think everybody can tell stories about things that we've set up or consultancies that we've done. For instance, I can tell you that if I was hired to set up some web service or an application in internet, I remember that the requirement of the vendor or the requirement to set up that application was you have to have a cluster and you need this specific database in that cluster with this information and with this configuration. And you went to the vendor, Microsoft, Linux, or whatever, and they said, well, you have to know that the cluster means that the machines have to be the same, with the same method, the same operating system. You cannot have different windows operating these systems. The disks have to be similar. The other plaques have to be the same, because if you change so traditionally, when you had to do a consultancy or an audit, you have to take into account all of that before you set up the application. But that's no longer the case, because somebody's managing all those platforms, and all that high-level hardware is already managed. And you only have to say, I need 2 machines in clutter, to just click on the right-hand side button, and then you can just get the database and everything you need quickly, and you can focus on just the application. In terms of business, it's very interesting because it allows you to deploy very quick. And because things are moving so fast nowadays, this type of technology becomes very necessary. Then there are a number of challenges that we have to face, and you can see them here. When you sell the idea to the customer, because I remember years ago, 6 years ago, I think, or less, when the first articles were printed about the cloud. If I don't pay for the cloud, what's going to happen with the data? Are they going to stay there? So there's been a bit of unease because you no longer own it. I don't know if you are 1.0. I still like to download things and have things in Nash at home. Is anybody here like me? Plenty of people. Even porn stuff I like to download. You have to be ready for everything. But when I sell the idea to the customer starts thinking and says, somebody's going to be managing that part of the infrastructure. I'm going to be able to deploy very quick, but I need to know if my data are going to be stored properly, if I have high-level data or personal data. How are they going to be stored within that infrastructure? What's the maintenance going to be like? If I deploy 70 servers, how am I going to deploy patches in those 70 servers? For instance, there is a growing problem with the Internet of Things, and because it's an explosion of material coming from Asia, that we can connect it with whatever you want, and what used to be a crazy idea nowadays it's becoming true. Last year, for instance, with smart cities, I liked an application that you could turn your iPhone into a thermometer. That, among other things, you could introduce on your backside. And then the application linked to internet and uploaded the data, etc. So the thermometer that our mother used with us, you're laughing, but this is still done by mothers, not fathers. It's mothers who take care of that. And there is a huge explosion regarding cloud, big data, and everything. So the Internet of Things, in terms of maintenance, in just a few years, we're going to see how companies start having a lot of problems when it comes to making patches on those devices. Because if you buy a device now, in 2 months' time, that company no longer exists or ignores you. And so who is going to manage and patch those devices? And the same thing regarding security. Have we done an audit of the platform? And then what's my responsibility if somebody takes that platform and makes a mess? Regarding trends, this is the Rayescale report, and in 2017 you can see that Amazon is the one that's covering the market, that's dominating the market, but Azure is beginning to catch up. So companies are also adopting Azure. So we have to be very clear about what the platform can do and what it cannot, and how to audit them. Regarding SMEs, Amazon is still the dominant player, but Azure is also picking up more and more customers, and we'll see what problems are involved in. Regarding architecture, well, like I've said earlier on, what Azure does is it sets up a base, and that's made available to you as customers, or will be able to use that platform. So Azure is based on hypervisor for virtual machines, for network electronics. It uses Linux, but not any Linux. Microsoft managed that when they were trying to manage the network electronics. They realized that it was unmanageable, so they They picked up Linux, they've adapted it to the Microsoft needs, and all of the network layer is managed through that with patches and so on. And then it executes Windows and Linux for the front end and to authenticate with it some applications. So we, as host, will be able to administer it, and that's all. There are different models, and based on the existing model, we're going to have part of the responsibility, and Microsoft will have another one. If we cover everything, we will manage everything from the network layer to applications. If we have infrastructure as a service, then we manage applications, data, runtime, etc., and visualization service, etc., is out. The same thing as platform, and as software as a service, then we'll do pretty much nothing. It would be like an Office 365, and we would upload the Excel 365, but we wouldn't be touching anything else. We're going to focus on this possibility. And so what's the scenario? I'm going to give you some context. I started with this in 2014, beginning of 2015, because I was asked whether I could do an audit to Azure. And I got cold feet because I had no clue. And I said, well, I'm going to take a look. So I got in touch with Microsoft, and they gave me the data from Azure, and I started sort of touching around, and I said, well, this is huge. I don't have a clue. So I didn't do it. Because it's quite a large platform, and I'll tell you now the problems you can encounter if you're auditing this type of platform, which are the ones that I've met in the last few years. So we're going to have two versions. So at home, when I was in peace, because I had nothing better to do, I decided to do it myself. And in the two Azure platforms, I start setting up SQL, virtual accounts, an Active Directive, 1,600 users, and then I start to dirty everything up. I get in touch with the malware platform. I download a lot of malware, and preparing the talk for last year about ransomware. One virtual machine with a ransomware, another one with infections. From the Active Directory, I'm going to delete 400 users, and then Microsoft got in touch with me and says, we hadn't told you, but you need to know that Azure does monitoring. And I said, okay, no problem. I have my own database, SQL injection, and they sent me this email. And they say, dear customer, we have noticed that something weird is going on in your infrastructure. Well, I had set up the Third World War in my, and I ignored this email because I come from Andalusia, and that's how we are. And you can see what it says there. This is the second email, and when I send another one, I said, well, maybe I need to do something about this. I got in touch with them, and they said, say that you're doing a reset, and they give you a date and some limits, etc. And I said, but they've sent 2 emails to me. When answer immediately, I sent them an email. No, my infrastructure, no way. Everything is stopped, everything has been deleted. And Microsoft sent an email 24 hours later saying, and they said, yeah, so you were downloading the film, yeah? And however much you say, they keep all of the information. And they're saying, no, 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 you were just downloading this film. We've seen you. So, with a bit more quiet, in Azure we're going to have 3 portals. One of them is the Resource Manager, which is the new portal. It's called Evita. I don't know why, the classic portal. All is integrated within the Active Directory part, and then an account portal, which is where we will be able to manage our purchase with Azure. That is how much we've spent with this infrastructure. Regarding endpoints, it's just the same. It's not the same thing to have my infrastructure as Juan Garrido, because I'm nobody, than a government setting up a platform for the government. Because since at the end, Azure and all of the cloud versions, Amazon, whoever, they set up a platform, and we are just guests in that platform. We do not need to know what the person next door does. So for government, they have isolated instances to be able to sell to the government. Just to tell them you're going to be completely isolated because Juanito is just somewhere else. So Azure, I don't know if you can read this properly. For instance, for China, they have a different domain. .cn for pre-production. If we have some application in pre-production, we can have another different domain with the INT. And then we're going to have a tenant identifier, which is what we need to authenticate ourselves, so that we can access our stuff. And that identifier represents a company. And for consultation, I have the subscription to my name, and if my email was this one, juanito@gmail.com, and the subscription removes that .com and add, and my directory would be Juanito Gmail. That would be my place or my house within Azure. So for you to see it better, can you believe somebody's ringing me right now? How much stress. So if in order to log in we have to do this, this would be my home within Azure, and we go directly with to the OpenID, which is what Microsoft uses to authenticate, and we will see that later on. And to know what tenants there are in one house. With this directory, we have found no namespace. There's nobody within Azure called this way. But if, but for instance, Facebook, does Facebook have something with Azure? It does, and its internal ID, their home address is this one. Does Microsoft have something within Azure? They've used Amazon, maybe. Can you imagine? Yes, they have this ID. Do they have an email linked to the subscription that's administrator at Microsoft? No. Do they have an email called admin? Yes. And they have a subscription. So as Juan Garrido, I also have my own. And the platform is the one you have here. Here we're going to be able to administer all of the Azure information, and this is what I have that I can put on and off. And this is the Ibiza platform where I can have all information regarding databases, virtual machines, etc. And this is the older platform. And here I'm going to have applications, the Active Directory, etc. Or Active Director. And for that, I'm using the data from my mobile. And this would be my home. So in the Active Director, we can see the users that we have generated, about 1,000. This is the directory. And in the user part, we will have all users. And the same thing regarding groups. So it's a very limited version of Active Director that we will see more in context. So this would be the platform. And now, on that platform, I can have all the assets. So when you set up Azure, the cloud part is going to have the same risks than the physical part. So if you set up a web through Azure or through another cloud provider, it's going to have the same shortcoming that if you had it in your office. The OWASP is going to be exposed. You have to audit that part. But if you administer the platform, same thing applies. Somebody can leak a user account. You can have your subscription identifiers already in internet regarding the virtual machine. The same thing applies. They have machines without patching and they have a public IP, then they can exploit the platform. And the same thing applies to the network. If I do not segment properly internal networks from what I have in Azure, when somebody comes in, if they're able to go through a VPN or through a leak, they can sort of jump between networks and they'll be able to make a mess within that subscription. Regarding the management of all this, Azure gives a lot of information. It gives you tools, it gives you portals, reports. It has quite powerful reports regarding Azure. It has a security center which is quite strong, where you can just take a look and see what all your instances are like. It has they have an incidents report department where they are monitoring the whole base. Everything to do with network is being, but not instance by instance, but it's cross monitoring. And if they find an IP that's within a botnet, they are going to tell you, you have a public IP which is within a botnet. And it's our responsibility, but a shared responsibility, that we should do investigation about that. And then monthly reports, etc. So what we're going to see directly are mistakes in the setting up, in the configuration that can take place in Azure. And from the beginning, we're going to have available the tools that Microsoft provides. For instance, as a user, we have many users that can be used within this platform. You have active director or asset director, which is very light compared to the traditional active director. We're going to be able to do very few things. But one of the things we can do is generate users and introduce users in a group. So as high privileges within that active director, you're going to have the service administration, etc. If you want to, or global administration, password administration, etc. In the classic approach, you only have 2 users. That's the big problem with Azure nowadays. Either you give it a sort of authorization as owner, they can do whatever they want within that platform, or service admin. And Microsoft is betting a lot on the new platform because it does have the reback included, it has the Rolex within the platform, and it's a lot simpler to be able to delegate responsibility to a third party. So when an audit is going to take place, you do not have to give a privilege as owner to the auditor, because you know that as auditors, the first thing we do is look at the GitHub to see if there is a tool that can do the audit for us. We look at the So I'm going to show some risk. Here we can transfer a poor Azure management. What's going on? We can transfer a poor Azure management, or sorry, a poor management of the company within Azure. If I go to user here, if I click on any of them, and we're going to see what privileges they have. For instance, this user is the billing or administration. In the new portal, it's nicer, it looks better, and a lot more direct. So if we go to users, we're going to have all users here. I take this Alam, which has been randomly generated. I go to his role, and what's the role? This is a user role in the profile and everything. So I have a user here that has no privilege. And I have him included within the subscription, which is something else that I wanted to show you. So who can manage the subscription? When they go into Azure, who is going to be able to see things? Well, I go to the control part. Who can see in here? Who can act here? And I should be here as my user, Juan Garrido, and administrators. And here we have people. So I have a user here called Amada, which is the one I want you to see. How quiet is everything? Will the demo work? Human resources. Amada, here she is. I have this user that I've just created. And her role is a user role and belongs to resources. If I authenticate myself as a mother, note that, for instance, this user is not within the subscription part of AZURE, so at first glance we will not be able to, or it would seem that this user has no privileges to access the subscription, but note that the user can see everything. If the user, for instance, goes to database, and has information about the databases, note that he has tools to be able to interact with the database. And if the user wants to show all his power, it's just deleted one database. So if at a first glance we can see that user, but we cannot see that it's able to do that, and he removes or eliminates the database, we look at the privileges of this user, and on the subscription, this user has the function of owner. And why? Because it has the same shortcomings of configuration of the Active Directory. When we introduce groups within groups that exist in AZURE, and if there is a poor configuration, at first glance we may be unable to see that a user has a high privilege and who are going to be able to mess up with my platform. And for that, Microsoft provides tools. And one of them is a command. I'm going to log in within AZURE with PowerChain.
Voy a loguear con la pava esta.
Okay, I'm going to do it here. Okay, I'm going to try to show it here, but with this command, which is, well, in the role assignation, the role allocation, I get the roles that are really there. We have administrator and Juan Garrido. But within the department of marketing, there is another group, and within that other group, we're a member of the administrators. So eventually we're going to have groups within groups. With the PowerShell commands, we will not be able to see them. And we're going to see other things. Regarding risks and regarding the patch, there's nothing more to add here. The machines that we have in AZURE, for these we need to check which patches there are, and if some of them lack something, we need to configure them. As auditors, we need to check that. Regarding SQL, we need to do the same thing. AZURE gives you all the necessary tools, and with SQL, you have all the necessary configurations so that with just one click, we can configure the SQL instances. So as auditors, we can check whether the ciphering of the database may be applied, whether that database has critical information. And we can either mask data, either credit cards or credit card numbers. We can mask those numbers. That can be done with SQL or any database. And that's it pretty much. This is a platform And to look at this here is very simple, because if you go to the security center, here we have a short picture of what we have there. For example, I have the 5 higher, and regarding SQL, the level shows me that I have storage accounts, 9 storage accounts that are not ciphered. This will be my database. And regarding the ciphering, this is not enabled in some databases. It's very easy to look at this way. Regarding the virtual machines, the same thing applies. I have virtual machines, and I can see which one is monitored, which one is on, which one is off. So I can see all that at the control center level. So how many patches does the machine have? To know that, we need to go to each machine and look at the configuration of each of them. Whenever we want to take this to another level as auditors, whenever we want to audit the platform, and if we have a lot of assets to audit, we'll have a big problem and we'll need to automate the task. Our chain, or Azure, doesn't have any tool to connect to these control panels and extract the information. We need to do it visually. So for auditors, it's a problem when we need to audit a lot of assets. This becomes a pretty tedious task. Okay. Let's close this, because it's getting out of hand. Regarding network, the same thing applies. By default, Azure raises an ADP. You raise a machine and they raise an ADP. That's the only firewall rules they have, split by a name called Network Security Group. And on that Network Security Group, you may generate some firewall rules that will affect everything that is within that Network Security Group. And that can be seen in all the platform in a simple way. And we can go to any machine and in any machine, if they have as an annex any sort of network interface, we can look at it, and in the network interface we can look at all the options we have. And there we have security groups, and here we can look at the rules we've got, the entry rules and the exit rules. Whenever we need to administer many tasks, or to administrate many tasks, these tasks may be long and tedious. Microsoft gives tools to at least extract information. Okay, more information. Okay, so let's have a look at the problems I have encountered. And we need to think a little bit about this when we take this to a higher level, because now big data is something everyone is talking about. When I was called for the first time to audit this, someone came to see me and said, well, look at this arrow. Look at how big it is. We're going to audit Azure. And you say, okay. But we don't really know what we're doing. This happened to me more than once. And then whichever expert comes to say, cloud? Oh, what cloud? That one? Have you watched the latest Rocky film? They're like, cloud? Which cloud? Same thing here. If we take this to another level, whenever we go to the platform, we find 40 databases, 87 servers, and 400 storage accounts. and 1 million more things, determining the user with the more administration privileges and the machine that lacks this or that patch, or the database that is not encoded, and many more things, becomes a really tedious task. So we need tools to do that, and as far as I know, there are only two. There are two in the Microsoft Operation Management Portal that takes all the Azures and puts them nicely on a console, but on a daily basis, as auditors, we only have two tools. Nessus is one of them that has a connector for Azure, and one of their pros is that we can launch scans directly through the Nessus engine, and this is quite cool. Unfortunately, it takes a long time and lots of effort to connect it. As an IT expert in a company, I may do it because I can generate an application in the Active Directory. To that application, I need to give it a code to work as a normal user, as a device, and then I connect that to Azure. So for IT, it works quite well. For the external consultancy, no. We need to go to the customer and say, well, to launch the Nessus, you need to create an application in the Active Directory, create a user, a password, give me the secret password of the application. I can set that up in my Nessus. Most customers will tell you, oh great Juanito, but no, it doesn't work that way. One of the cons is that it has very few checks nowadays, and it's necessary to be able to do all this. I want to show you this so that you can look at it. Here's the Nessus I have launched against my infrastructure. I usually put the same password for all the accounts. And let's look at this now. From Azure, there are 4 mistakes and 48 are okay. If I go to compliance, there are quite a few mistakes. And look at the first one here, virtual machine classic. There's a public IP address that has access, and we can see that in the information we get. Cool. Hey, database. Here, the audit part is not enabled here, but I have 7 databases, even though the other part is not enabled on this one. And here I just get it for one of them, for one database. But I've got 7. And it only does a check for one. Wait, I only have a 10% of battery and I didn't bring the charger. So there are no classic virtual machines. You believe that, don't you? Okay. I'll have to turn it off. Is it the same? You think it will work with this charger? Well, if his smoke comes out, no, it doesn't work. It's too little. Anyway. Okay, so quickly, another tool. There is another tool called AZURE Explorer, a very good tool. Depends on the PowerShell CMLs. Therefore, we'll have a problem because the PowerShell CMLs do not include all the Azure information. Then we have the Nessus connector, and nowadays regarding the command lines, we have the PowerShell CML Azure version 1 and 2. We have the Azure Resource Manager, And here we have the connectors for Azure by PowerShell, but there's little information on them. And for the classic part, same thing. There are also options to do it. Problems. There are many problems, such as auditing two platforms at once. There are problems who have things in the classic part, and other customers who have things in the old part. So to integrate all that, I need the PowerShells from the version 1 and 2. Many things to audit this. The Microsoft tools are not integrating the Security Center. I cannot bring all the Security Center information from Microsoft with this. So for this, I use all the internal APIs of Microsoft to interact with Azure. And to do so, I use the Network API with Aval, which is the Active Directory Authentication Library that integrates with .NET, Python, JavaScript, Node, Java, and PowerShell, and I integrate all that into a script in PowerShell that I created. So the PowerShell will run on an API, and with that API, we collect all the information we can. Oh, bloody hell, I ran out of battery. Do you have a laptop? Which Windows do you have? You might not be able to see the tool. Can I connect to my email with this?
Vale, voy a coger otra versión.
Okay, I'm gonna get another tool version, and I'm gonna give you the context. Here I called a few friends to test the tool in environments where there is a high workload in Azure. I would like to thank Pedro Laguna publicly because he ran the tool in his domains. Okay, I'm gonna connect to my email, okay? Which Windows is this? Is this Windows Vista? I don't think we'll be able to set this up. This is PowerShell 2.0. I don't think we'll be able to set this up actually. Is there anyone who has a PowerShell 5.0 or 3.0? Okay, I don't think we'll be able to set it up. So I do apologize. I might be able to find a charger for my laptop or another laptop I could use.
Tienes que esperar, le enchufe mi. Sí.
¿Tienes ese, el 2000?
Do you have Excel 2016? Yes.
¿O no? Leche.
Sí, sí, tiene ahora, ¿no?
Ya tiene, venga, dale.
¿Él? ¿Sí?
Yes, okay. Right. So, all right. Right, this is not my team. These are their subscriptions, so I do apologize. Okay, we're gonna force authentication, but we're gonna get yours here. Do you have credentials there for your subscription? Yeah, I'm just deleting the cache and forcing the authentication here. Okay, you may use these. Use the one that has JS there. I think there may be some machines there. Okay. So basically, once authenticated within the platform, we go here and we see all the subscriptions we have. What's your name? Juanma. So thank you very much, Juanma. We're going to choose one of the platforms to be audited. He asked me to choose this one. And the tool will connect to Azure, and through the API it will extract all the information that it can. And here we're collecting all the machine information. The tool supports threads, so it's quite quick when it comes to auditing the platform. And if we have some sort of error in a machine, the monitoring agent is not supported with the machine, but here we may have error messages from it. When the tool finishes, it may export all the information in different files, such as CSV, JSO, XML, and I give support to Office 2010 and Office 2013. I'm going to do a test with Office 2016. I'm going to make the most of this. And the tool is asking about all the users in the platform, and they're trying to get a picture of whoever has privileges and who doesn't. So once they're finished, they'll have the desired information. And the good thing about the tool is that we can say, hey, audit this, or just this part, because I'm just interested in the Active Directory part, and here you can share the information with your customer, or with whoever, or just audit the virtual machine part. All that part is provided by Microsoft Azure through their API. The only problem here is that since the cloud world is so quick, we'll find many APIs in preview that may not go into production, or something might change. So I actually found in the platform that in some weeks I could have access to some sort of flag, but the week after I could not have access to that. So as of today, from the API versions these are in production, and there shouldn't be any change here. So I don't really use preview. And you have quite a few things, don't you? Okay, so this will be the tool. I wish I could have shown you the exit, but unfortunately I ran out of battery. I do apologize. And I'm planning to free the tool in about a month. If anyone wants it, I'll send an email. My intention is to free this in about a month. But I haven't yet polished a few things here, even though the tool should work well. I do apologize, I ran out of battery. Unbelievable, you ran out of battery. And this is it, really. Do you have any questions? While we go through the whole Microsoft directory, it might take a while. Anyway, a big round of applause for my colleague here, who gave me a hand. And if you have any questions, please go ahead. Do you have any question? One question here. I've been working with Azure and GitHub for nearly a year, and the possibilities are many here. But in those environments, what do you think will be interesting for auditing? Well, the most scary thing about IoT are two things: governability, who governs this, and then the patches, which is very important. Regarding the IoT, Microsoft is doing a lot, and regarding the single operating system, the best thing they've got is the management part, which is really interesting in the company. But eventually this is according to the type of device and other things. You know, and everything else, passwords, patches, whether things can be reversed. There's a public stack that you may be able to download, and you can reverse certain things, but it's lacking some things. But in Azure you'll have communication channels to gather information without needing to connect to the platform, because the platform connection is cool for level 1 or 2, but if you need to do some sort of audit, such as incident response, maybe with a user or kill database. So for example, here I may have a problem with that. For example, Azure gives you access to a platform where you may download on a daily basis in real time the logs of everything Azure is doing there. So they have the Azure Insights. The OMS, with OMS, I mean OMS feeds from this, but it's as an auditor. Let's say you go to a company and they don't have OMS.
You can use the API to be able to recover the information. With this tool, you'll be able to do that. You can react and give an answer to the customer. You can explain to them that the insight reports based on the contract you have are going to be maintained for 7 days. I don't know if up to 60 or 30. So the company needs to recover that information and store that locally or somewhere else. We need to finish. Okay. So you may clap. Thanks very much.